My name is Sophia Jones. I'm 28 years old. And if someone had told me 3 years ago that I would be sitting alone in a tiny apartment in Chicago, 7 months pregnant, crying over unpaid bills while trying to rebuild my entire life from scratch, I would have laughed in their face because back then I thought I had everything under control. I had a stable corporate job, a beautiful downtown apartment, designer clothes hanging neatly inside my closet, friends who thought I was successful, and a future that looked polished from the outside. But sometimes the people who look the strongest are secretly falling apart, where nobody can see them. And sometimes the person who destroys your life isn't a stranger. Sometimes it's the person you trusted most. The night my entire world collapsed, I remember sitting on my bathroom floor staring at a pregnancy test while my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. 2 pink lines. I couldn't breathe. Outside my apartment window, Chicago traffic moved normally. People laughed somewhere below my building. Sirens echoed through the cold night air. But inside that bathroom, my entire future changed forever because the father of my baby was my boss. And 3 days later, he fired me. I grew up in Milwaukee with my younger brother and my mother, who spent most of her life exhausted. My father left when I was 9 years old. Not dramatically, no screaming, no huge fight. One day he simply stopped coming home. At first, Mom tried protecting us with excuses. Your dad's busy. He's working late. But eventually, even I understood the truth. He had chosen another life. Watching my mother cry quietly at night changed something inside me permanently. I promised myself I would never become dependent on anyone, never allow a man to control my future emotionally or financially. So I became obsessed with success. I worked harder than everyone around me. While other girls in college were partying, I worked double shifts at coffee shops to pay tuition bills. I graduated with student debt, anxiety, and a desperate hunger to prove myself. At 25, I finally got hired by one of the fastest growing marketing agencies in Chicago, Brightbridge Media. That job felt like survival. The office looked modern and glamorous. Glass walls, expensive coffee machines, rooftop meetings, people walking around carrying MacBooks like they owned the world. For the first time in my life, I felt important. And that's where I met Daniel Harper. My boss. Daniel was 42, calm, intelligent, confident in the kind of way powerful men usually are. He had this ability to make people feel seen when he talked to them, especially women. At first, I barely existed to him. I was just another ambitious employee, buried under deadlines and presentations. But one night, after a late meeting, he stopped beside my desk while everyone else had already gone home. "You're still here?" he asked. I laughed nervously, trying not to get fired. He smiled slightly. "You're one of the hardest workers in this company, Sophia." I don't know why those words affected me so much. Maybe because when you spend your whole life trying to prove your worth, attention feels intoxicating. After that night, he started noticing me more. He'd stop by my desk to ask how my day was going, bring me coffee before meetings, compliment my ideas in front of the team. And slowly, I started waiting for those moments. At the time, my personal life was quietly falling apart. Most of my friends had moved away or gotten married. My mother's health had started declining. I spent most evenings eating takeout alone while pretending I enjoyed independence. Loneliness changes people. It makes attention feel like love. One Friday evening after work, Daniel invited me out for drinks with coworkers. Everyone eventually left except us. That should have been my warning, but instead, I stayed. We talked for hours that night. Not about work, about life. He told me his marriage had been emotionally dead for years, said he and his wife barely spoke anymore. "She stopped seeing me a long time ago," he said quietly. Looking back now, I realize how practiced those lines sounded. But at the time, I believed every word. Before leaving the bar, he touched my hand gently, and my entire body froze. I should have walked away. Instead, I let him drive me home. For weeks after that night, I kept trying to convince myself nothing serious was happening. But emotional affairs don't begin physically. They begin with attention, texts at midnight, long conversations, feeling chosen, feeling understood. Daniel became the center of my emotional world without me even noticing. Every morning he texted me before work, "Thinking about you. You looked beautiful today. I wish things were different." Sometimes he'd invent fake client meetings so we could spend time together alone, outside the office. Every time guilt started creeping into my chest. He knew exactly how to calm it. My marriage is already over. You make me feel alive again. I've never connected with anyone like this before. And slowly, I fell in love with him. Or maybe I fell in love with the version of him he carefully created for me. By month 4, our relationship had become physical. Secret hotel rooms, late night office kisses, weekend trips disguised as work conferences. I lived in constant anxiety, but also constant emotional addiction. The worst part, I truly believed we had a future. Daniel talked about it sometimes, said maybe one day we could finally live openly together. Those conversations became the oxygen I survived on, but eventually, small cracks began appearing. He never called me on weekends unless he was alone. He became emotionally cold whenever I asked difficult questions, and anytime I tried talking about the future seriously, he'd suddenly make me feel dramatic for asking. One night, while he was showing me something on his phone, I accidentally saw family photos. Him, his wife, 2 daughters smiling together on a beach vacation, happy, not miserable, not broken, happy. I remember feeling sick to my stomach. Why are you still taking family vacations if your marriage is over? I asked quietly. His expression changed immediately. You don't understand complicated marriages, Sophia? That sentence silenced me because suddenly I felt immature, over emotional, like maybe I was the problem. That's what manipulative people do. They make you question your instincts until you stop trusting yourself completely. So I stayed, and I wish more than anything that I hadn't. Around month 8, things at work started changing, and coworkers looked at me differently. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. People whispered. Chicago corporate offices survive on gossip. One afternoon, a woman from accounting pulled me aside inside the restroom. Be careful, she whispered. My stomach dropped instantly. What do you mean? She hesitated before answering. Daniel's done this before. I felt all the blood leave my body. Before I could ask more questions, she walked away. That entire night, I couldn't stop shaking. When I confronted Daniel later, he became furious. People are jealous because I favor your work, he snapped. But has this happened before? He slammed his glass down hard. Stop acting paranoid. That was the first time I saw genuine anger in him. And honestly, I should have left right then, but love mixed with emotional dependency becomes something terrifying. You start protecting the person hurting you, and that's exactly what I did. Then came the moment that changed everything forever. I found out I was pregnant. I still remember sitting alone on my bathroom floor at 2 a.m. while rain hit the apartment windows. 2 pink lines. I couldn't stop crying, not because I hated the baby, but because deep down, I already knew the fantasy was over. Reality had finally arrived. When I told Daniel, he went completely silent, not emotional, not happy, not even shocked, silent, like a man calculating damage. We need to think carefully, he finally said. That sentence shattered something inside me. Not for you, okay? Not we'll figure this out together. Just strategy, damage control. For the next week, he barely spoke to me. His texts became cold and short. At work, he avoided eye contact completely. I started panicking. Then one evening, he came to my apartment. I thought maybe he had processed everything. Maybe he was scared but ready to step up. Instead, he sat on my couch, staring at the floor. I can't destroy my family, he said quietly. I felt numb. What does that mean? And it means this situation has become impossible. Situation, not baby, not us. Situation. Tears immediately filled my eyes. You told me your marriage was over. It's complicated. No, I whispered. You lied to me. His expression hardened instantly. Lower your voice. I'll never forget that moment for the rest of my life. Because that's when I realized something horrifying. The man I loved never truly existed. He was a performance. And now that things had consequences, the performance was ending. Over the next month, he became cruel in ways I never imagined possible. He ignored my messages for days, started criticizing my work publicly during meetings, acted irritated anytime I spoke to him. Meanwhile, I was exhausted, nauseous, terrified, and emotionally collapsing. Then came the worst day of my life. It was a rainy Tuesday morning. Human Resources emailed me asking me to come upstairs. The second I entered the room, I knew HR representatives never smile during termination meetings. Daniel wasn't there. Coward. A woman in a navy blazer slid papers across the table. Due to restructuring and performance concerns, your employment is being terminated, effective immediately. I stared at her in disbelief. Performance concerns. And I had literally won employee awards months earlier. This doesn't make sense, I whispered. She avoided eye contact. The decision is final. I knew exactly what was happening. Daniel was removing the problem. And me? I left the building carrying a cardboard box with my desk belongings, while coworkers pretended not to stare. Humiliation feels physical, like your skin no longer fits your body. The second I got inside my car, I completely broke down, screaming and crying so hard, my chest hurt. Not because I lost the job, because I realized how disposable I had been to him all along. 10 months. 10 months of manipulation. 10 months of promises. 10 months of giving someone access to my body, heart, and future, only to be erased like a mistake. Pregnancy alone is terrifying. Pregnancy while unemployed and emotionally shattered feels almost impossible. My savings disappeared quickly between rent, doctor appointments, and bills. I stopped answering phone calls because I was too ashamed to explain what happened. There were nights I sat in darkness just to avoid increasing the electricity bill. I'd stare at my growing stomach and cry from fear. How was I supposed to raise a child alone? What kind of mother was I already becoming? But the worst pain wasn't financial. It was betrayal. I kept replaying every conversation in my head, every compliment, every promise, every lie. Trauma traps people inside memories. You keep searching for the exact moment the illusion became real. Around month 6 of pregnancy, depression hit me hard. I stopped taking care of myself properly, stopped going outside unless necessary, stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. One night, I completely broke down while trying to assemble a cheap baby crib alone. I sat on the floor, surrounded by screws and wooden pieces, crying hysterically. I can't do this, I whispered repeatedly. Then suddenly, my baby kicked. Small, gentle, but real. I froze. For the first time in months, my pain wasn't the only thing inside me anymore. There was another life depending on me completely. And something changed that night. Not magically, not instantly, but slowly. And I realized I had two choices. Let betrayal destroy me, or survive long enough to become someone my child could be proud of. And so I started rebuilding my life one painful step at a time. I found freelance marketing work online. Not glamorous, not stable, but enough to survive. I also started therapy. At first, I hated it because talking about pain makes it feel real. But eventually, my therapist said something that changed me deeply. Manipulative men don't target weak women, Sophia. They target emotionally vulnerable women who are starving for love. That sentence healed part of my shame because for months I kept calling myself stupid, weak, pathetic, but loneliness can distort anyone's judgment when someone studies your emotional wounds carefully enough. My son was born during the first snowfall of December. Labor lasted 14 exhausting hours, and when the nurse finally placed him on my chest, everything became quiet. His tiny fingers wrapped around mine immediately, and I cried harder than I ever had before. Not from sadness, from love, pure overwhelming love. I named him Noah because after the worst storm of my life, he became my reason to survive. The first year as a single mother nearly destroyed me physically. No sleep, constant anxiety, bills piling up, working remotely while holding a crying baby in my arms. There were nights I fell asleep sitting beside Noah's crib because exhaustion completely consumed me. But motherhood also transformed me. For the first time in my life, I stopped measuring my worth through male validation. Because my son needed me emotionally, alive, present, strong, and slowly. And I became stronger, not because pain disappeared, because I adapted to carrying it. Daniel never contacted me again after firing me. Not during the pregnancy. Not after Noah was born. Nothing. Sometimes I'd stare into Noah's eyes and feel rage, knowing his father chose absence willingly. But eventually, even anger becomes exhausting. So I let go. Not for Daniel. For myself. 2 years later, I heard through an old coworker that Daniel's wife eventually discovered multiple affairs and divorced him publicly. Apparently, his reputation collapsed afterward. When I heard the news, I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing because healing changes revenge. By then, my life no longer revolved around the man who destroyed me. I had built something stronger from the ruins, my own life. Today, I am sitting here telling the story while Noah sleeps in the next room, clutching a stuffed dinosaur almost bigger than his body. He's 3 years old now, obsessed with pancakes and toy trucks. Every morning, he runs into my room yelling, "Mommy, wake up." And somehow, that sound healed parts of me. Therapy never could. Sometimes people ask if I regret everything. Honestly, I regret trusting the wrong person. I regret abandoning my instincts. I regret confusing attention with love. But I do not regret Noah, not even for 1 second, because my son became proof that beautiful things can still grow from devastating pain. If there's one thing I want women to understand after hearing my story, it's this. Loneliness can make you ignore red flags you would normally never tolerate. And manipulative people know exactly how to use that loneliness against you. A man who truly loves you will never make you feel hidden, disposable, replaceable. Love should not feel like anxiety mixed with confusion. That isn't love. That's emotional survival. For a long time, I thought my story was about betrayal, but now I realize it was actually about rebirth, because sometimes life destroys the version of you built on desperation, so you can finally become the version built on truth. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it didn't hurt, but reaching a point where your pain no longer controls your future. Tonight, after I finish recording this story, I'll probably clean Noah's toys off the living room floor, drink cold coffee I forgot to finish hours ago, and prepare tomorrow's work schedule. A simple life, a peaceful life, and after everything I survived, peace feels more valuable than love ever did, because 3 years ago, I thought being chosen by a powerful man would save me. But in the end, the little boy he abandoned became the greatest blessing of my entire life.